Hey everybody, it is Friday. It is 12:30 on the East Coast, and let me welcome you to this week's edition of Litvak Leadership Live, where we talk about personal improvement, understanding yourself so you can become the leader that you want to be and make a difference in other people's lives. Today we've got a tremendous guest, a personal friend, someone who was once a supervisor of mine at one of the companies that I had worked at. And I even interviewed him years before that. And he tells me what I was like. And frankly, I think he's making it all up. Let me introduce you to my friend, Bill Crouch.
Hey, Sean. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I don't think I got very far in your interview. I wasn't what you were looking for, apparently.
I just have this slight image sitting at that round table in my office all those years ago, that office with no windows, that
Yep.
I was way focused. Anyways, today, everyone, we are talking about episode 176, Become a Productive Teammate. So Bill, like myself, has been in the building service contractor industry for years and years. But Bill is also a published author, and let me get his book up here. Do You Remember Me is his book. Bill, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book before we get started?
Sure. It's fiction. It's a fictional novel dealing with it's got a little bit of a love story in it. But everything that happens to the main character is kind of more background in his journey of learning about loving himself. And he's trying to find happiness from outside. He's trying to find it not only with relationships and friends, but also with experimenting with drugs and alcohol and those kinds of things. Trying to find it at work, and so he goes on an incredible journey where he finds out that the loving himself is really what he needs to remember. Is that everyone out there who supports him, they're great, but you have to love yourself in order to be successful.
And so would you say this is somewhat about imposter syndrome, or just getting to know and loving yourself to begin with so you can even begin to get traction in your life?
I think at some point, if you're truly experiencing happiness, someday we may be retired, and then what do we do with ourselves? Especially if you're one of those who's worked so hard all your career life. You look around and you discover, hey, that is me. My work is me. Well, I think you really need to dig deeper and find out, no, there's a you in there that's been with you since the very beginning, and that will be with you there till the very end. And until you become acquainted with that individual inside you, you really will not achieve happiness outside of the extracurricular activities that are going on in your life.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what people do sometimes is to dull the boredom in their lives. So I am sure your book has a message that is going to echo with a lot of people. So folks, if you want to reach Bill, you can reach him at WM Crouch at wmcrouchauthor.com. Check out his book. You can get it on both, as I had up there, Kindle and paperback. And if you're in the greater Louisville metropolitan area, Bill, I know your book is available at least one bookstore. What bookstore is that?
Yeah, so if you go into the Highlands, my brain is doing a little fog thing. Huh?
Backflips.
Backflips, yes. We'll have to come back to that question, Sean. For some reason, I can't pull the name up. It's but at any rate, they're in the Highlands on Bardstown Road. Their bookstore is there. It's a local place, a wonderful place for all the great books, but also some interesting arts and crafts in there as well.
Okay. So jumping into our topic of becoming a productive teammate, I like to begin with scripture. So the beginning of strife is as when one lets out water. Therefore, abandon contention before a quarrel starts. So, Bill, I just want to ask you, in your experience in management, in leading people, have you been in a situation where you could just see someone talking, a conversation going on, and you can tell that someone was just going to let it rip at some point, that it was coming?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the emotional involvement and that feeling that sometimes that you have to be right will lead you down a dark path when trying to deal with your teammates. Because when you're trying to work through something like that, it doesn't matter what the individuals think. It matters what the group thinks collectively. And you absolutely have to be wary of those times when your personal interest may start you to lash out or defend yourself, and put that out before it gets going.
So, so many people, when they find themselves in leadership, I know from my own personal experience, I was thrust into leadership. My first promotion into leading people is I had outsold our operations group at the company I was working for. And they said, "You think you're so smart. Now you get to run operations too." And that was my basic leadership training, was go show everyone what they need to do. And it was incredibly frustrating. At the time, though, what I would have liked, and I ended up experiencing later in my career, was that you can be the leader, but you also need to be part of another team where leadership is not within yourself, that you are part of that team and there is another leader. So you are learning to be submitting to another leader, yet at the same time you have your own group to lead. But this reminds me, Bill, of a meeting you and I sat in at one time, where we were leaders leading our individual groups. And this leadership meeting of the leaders, we were being trained that our group was the most important. And when we left that meeting, we had to be unified. How do you think people balance that leadership, follower, submitting to another leader dynamic within their own lives?
That's all about being clear on the objective, understanding what the goal is. If the team can't agree on that, then everybody's going to pursue what they believe to be most important, and that's just going to splinter the team.
So, how do you suggest that people avoid the splintering of the teams? Because you've got various teammates, various leaders that all have their own agenda, and sometimes they think that their fiefdom is what is actually driving the company, when instead it is the unification, the collaboration of the various teams. How do you get people to understand that?
I think that just has to tie back to the ultimate goal. I mean, everybody's got to see what the path to the goal is, and if they can't agree on where they're going, then they will they'll pick up whatever they think is the most important thing to achieve, and they'll go after that individually.
So I know that personally, the fruit of the Spirit has had a huge impact in my own life, in leadership and in working in teams. And as a reminder to everyone, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, which is a really interesting word, and self-control. And when it was first taught to me that this was for business and not just for church, I kind of rebuffed on it. Bill, what do you think of these various facets of the fruit of the Spirit is most lacking in the business world?
And isn't it sad that we don't realize it earlier in our careers? How important that is, not just for the ultimately for the business, but for your own self-satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
All these are stumbling blocks for us all. And, I think sometimes you can't be told certain things. You have to learn them and live them. And you are so right. Fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness. That it's also critically important, not just in business, but when we go home as well.
I think the area here that I've struggled with the greatest, to be perfectly honest, is meekness. Because meekness, by definition, and people think it's, oh, please don't do anything, when really meekness, when you look it up, it's strength under control. And I know for me personally, I have a loud voice. I have a very direct way of speaking. I definitely have an opinion on most everything. Bill's laughing. We've worked together in the past. Um, and to be able to communicate that in a joyful, peaceful, patient, gentle way is what meekness is. How many meek leaders or meek teammates have you seen over your career, Bill?
Not enough, Sean. But on meekness, the thing is, and I've seen this happen with you. I've been in the room with you when you had the right answer and you faced opposition. Meekness is still critically important in continuing to pursue what you know to be the right answer. You have to do it meekly, but you have to do it, or otherwise you risk the whole thing getting thrown off the tracks. And to your question, if we saw a little meekness in our politicians right now, we wouldn't be divided right down the middle.
Oh, it would be great to see some meekness in our politicians. I think that meekness is one of those things that helps and facilitates collaboration, and frankly, self-control facilitates collaboration. I'm glad you brought up politics. We're not going to discuss specific parties, but these 13 items here to me are the outgrowth of the fruit of the Spirit. These are all facets. These are all parts of an individual that an individual needs to have to be able to be a productive teammate, whether they're the leader in the group or whether they are part of the group in support of the leader, submitting to the leader. And the number one thing that I have listed here as trustworthy, I had an experience once where I had come up with a plan that I had presented to my boss, and not you, another boss, and he ended up giving it to someone else who presented it to the higher ups, and they got credit for it. And I never trusted that person again. And I still speak to that person to this day, but that is something that is always in the back of my mind. I have forgiven them, but to violate trust like that, I'm not sure if a leader can ever recover from that. What do you think?
No, you're right. And also the pain that you feel, you've got to find some way to deal with that. You've got to let that go. You got to move beyond that. I mean, yeah, it happened. Surprise, it happens to all of us, and that's unfortunate. But yeah, you have to find a way for yourself to be able to move on. But trustworthiness is critically important, not just with our leaders, but also with the people that we work with. So, and they have to be able to trust you. And I think if you as a leader, if you exemplify the traits of a trustworthy leader, that will be recognized and will be mirrored.
And looking at the very last item on this list, not full of strife. When people think of strife or being argumentative, another word for it, they normally think of someone that is outwardly like that, aggressively like that. However, it is my opinion that you can be passively aggressively full of strife by redirecting things in such a passive aggressive way that nothing gets accomplished. I once worked with someone like that it always had to be their way, and they were a master of being passively aggressive to get things done. Have you run into people like that, Bill?
Oh yes, absolutely. The passive aggressives are the dangerous ones, because you never really know what their true opinion is. You can make a guess or an assumption, but you run the risk if they think it needs to go one way and you think it needs to go another, and they're handling it passive aggressively. you could be completely wrong on what their true desire is as far as whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So sure. But you do need to be not full of strife, because that aggressive nature, or if we want to call it that, or anger, or showing an emotion that could be, I don't know, terrifying, I guess. That goes back to the trustworthiness. If someone's going to act like that, the assumption off the bat is, well, we're not going to get anything done here. This guy's already made up his mind. So you have to dial it back, so that you're not perceived as someone who is angrily going their way regardless. The whole thing that we used to always say in business, my way or the highway.
Right.
That truly does not work unless you're in the military.
Absolutely. People do not blindly just follow the orders of the leader. That especially in this day and age in which we find ourselves. When you and I began our careers, it was much more, okay, this is what the boss said, this is what we're doing. Things have really turned into a far more collaborative discussion type leadership than before.
That's a great point, Sean. And the funny thing is, back when they said, this is what you're going to do, and we said, okay, that's what we're going to do, we might have done it, but boy, we grumbled the whole way. All of our teammates did, because they never got an input. They might not even disagree with what the leader's final say is on it. But if they never got any input on it, they're not going to accept it as easily.
Yeah. Well, and when you talk about the various leaders, there is a fine line between showing that you are able to be coached, I think, and just walking around in weakness. Whether it's my way or the highway. Okay, I am coachable still as the leader, or I want everybody's opinion, and I just want to be loved. That whole ability to be coached, I think, is something that could really be focused on in leadership training, that so people understand that they need to show, it's not compassion. What's the word I'm trying to get to here, Bill? People need to show thoughtfulness, I guess. Empathy. Yeah, one of my favorite words.
Yes, I know.
Gotten better at it over the years, but I just think about,
Sean. You aren't even. I don't even recognize the guy I met the very first time I met you. You're so completely different, and not just I'm saying something happened and you changed. You just get better every year. You're just always working on, how do I deal with people? How do I deal with my faith? What is it about work that I love, and how do I do that as best I can? You've always said these things, so yeah. You bless me in what you are saying. I think that, wait, I want to throw up this other comment here. This is where I find myself in this stage of my career. Although I think I am in the middle, there is something about being the elder statesman. And I've told this story before, that I had once told someone that reported to me, as we were bringing on someone to eventually replace this person, that they had the opportunity to be the elder statesman, to pass on their knowledge, to support this individual, to, so to speak, anoint this person in front of everybody just in their actions. And this person that I was coaching to do that wanted no part of it whatsoever. That they could not see past themselves, that they thought that I was saying your career's over. And that wasn't what I was saying at all. And now that I've reached, I think, the physical age that person was, I have a completely different attitude about it, that I want to be the elder statesman, quite frankly. I want people to say, hey, have you run into this before? Explain to me how to do it. Yeah, and the elder statesman also reminds me of a conversation you and I had a long time ago. I don't remember whose office we were sitting in, but it didn't matter because you and I both have tons of awards and plaques and funny things that we've earned over the years. And we were having a discussion about, I don't think it was so much about legacy in the business, but just how our coworkers perceived us and what they would remember about us. And I think we both came to the agreement that all the plaques and certificates and trophies and all that will mean nothing at the end of our career.
Nothing.
The only thing that we will look back on with pride are the people that we've helped along the way, the people that we knew we could count on and that we treated well, and the people that we brought along and maybe would not have ended up being as good as they were had we not had some time with them. And those are the achievements that I want to look back on as an elder statesman.
Well, and it's interesting you bring that up, because I remember the day that I came into your office and I started asking you questions for something that I needed, and you just looked up and you said, "Hi." And I was like, "Yeah." And you go, "Sean, you can say hi first." And this was when, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, where you told me for the next month, every conversation that I went into internally, I had to begin with, "Hi, how are you? How's your day? What are you working on?"
Yeah.
Before I could tell the person what I needed them to do or what I wanted from them or what my problem was that we had to discuss. And I had to make those statements, ask those questions, and get a response out of the person. And it was painful to do that at first.
It is painful for our personalities because you and I don't have that problem when we talk to each other.
Right.
We may not have seen each other in weeks, and yet we're going to say, "This is what's going to happen. How do you want to handle it?" And we go on about our business. And then maybe, 8 hours later, we'll say, how are you doing, by the way? But that's okay. That's our personality. What I learned of that, Sean, that I'll call it a technique. It's really too simple to be called a technique. But I learned that because of my own failing with my team, in that they felt like I was not interested in their personal lives, not interested in how hard they were working, that all I ever wanted was results. And that's true, but that's not a conducive work.
I was going to say, what's wrong with that?
I had to learn, that we can't all have my personality, and which is why I think you and I worked so well together. We had the same type personality, but you can't do that with all people. You have to understand where they're coming from, and particularly the groups that I was working with at the time, they'd come to complain, and so. My mentor told me, "All right, here's what I want you to do." So I had to learn that in the same way you did. And you're right. It is painful. I thought this is an awful lot of unnecessary conversation. But at the end of 6-8 months, I guess, I had a more comfortable relationship with all of my peers, and they were more than willing to help me out. Whereas before they were kind of shying away. So it works.
And I don't know if this is building service contractor specific or not, because I will say those 4 things to someone in a conversation, and sometimes their response is, "Okay, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you mean?" And they're like, "You're being."
That's called a green light. That's when you can go on and say what you need to say. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, "What do you want?" I had someone in HR say to me, "What do you want? I don't have time for these questions. Just tell me what you want." It kind of cracked me up.
Which you can do. You did it for years.
I can do.
Yeah.
Bruce says, "Cordial before business. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." Bruce Himmelblau is one of the most cordial people I know. He doesn't have a lot to say, but when he says something, it definitely has some traction and some meat to it. So thank you, Bruce. That's a great comment.
Right on.
So, Bill, as we look at this. So there's always something to be learned from those you serve. Even those with flaws have something to teach you. How do you get the quiet people on your team to start talking?
Um, yeah, good question. I guess more by observing their actions and then trying to find, just simple questions, simple, not aggressive questions, but simple questions of, tell me why you do it that way. And that's very interesting that you do it this way. Why is it that you do it like that? Or how are you taught to do this? And are you aware of the way that we're doing it now? And slowly get into a conversation about something specific until you can start working through some of those barriers. Quiet people are uncomfortable with those conversations. They don't want to talk. They want to be left to do what they need to do. And that can be really frightening for a quiet person to be around someone like you or I, because we don't have time for that. So we have to remember to be patient.
I mean, I thought about a one member of my team that I asked him why he never participated in the group conversation, why he was just always quiet. He was like, you guys are going to do what you want to do. I don't see the point of me telling you what I think. And that was, okay,
Yeah.
big red flag right there.
Mm-hmm.
So the next week I had him present to the group, and it was like a different guy. Because all of a sudden he was leading the conversation and he had tremendous things to talk about, tremendous insights. And, the balance, and this guy is very introverted, but the balance of allowing the introvert to lead as opposed to the extrovert that just desires to lead is something that I think as leaders we need to look at how to draw people out, because frankly, my wife and I serve on the greeters ministry at our church, and some of the best greeters, dare I say, are the introverts as opposed to the extroverted people, because the extroverted people are just saying hello to everybody and having a loud conversation.
Let's not equate introvert with flawed.
I'm not doing that.
Okay.
Maybe it sounds like I am, but I'm not. Okay, well, here, we'll take down the word flaw. Different, that these introverts can really get into a deeper conversation that the extroverts find challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. An extrovert can walk in a room and start 20 different conversations, and the introvert will walk in and have 2 very meaningful personal conversations. And yeah, that's the difference. Yeah, my dad was an extreme extrovert, and I kind of really consider myself an introvert. And it's interesting the different perspectives that we have on selling real estate, for example. My dad would go up and down the street trying to talk to people, and I don't. I look for people who need help, and then I find out what their need is, and I address their need. I mean, that's 2 totally different approaches to business. And Dad could do what he did, and he enjoyed doing it. I can't do that, and that's not where my strength lies.
No, you are not the extrovert. You are definitely more of a thinker with your head as opposed to a thinker with your mouth, like me. So if I'm thinking it, it's coming out sooner rather than later. So Bill, we've gone almost 30 minutes, which at lunchtime is a good amount of time to go. I'm going to have you wrap it up. And I'm going to throw a scripture at you that I want you to talk about with leading the team and being productive. Even a fool, when he holds his peace, is counted wise, and he who shuts his lips is esteemed a man of understanding.
Isn't that so true? I think if you have something to say, and it contributes to moving the ball forward, then say it, But I do think we have to sometimes listen to people who clearly don't have the right perspective or are not presenting in the proper way. And we kind of look at them and say, if he just kept his mouth shut, I think we'd been a lot better off. And it's hard to know who has the understanding and who is clearly going down the right path. So sometimes the best thing to do is keep your mouth shut and listen.
Here, 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 here. Bill, thank you so much for being on the show. You're a published author. I'm going to be a published author very soon in January. Folks, if you're interested in my book, go to proverbsforleadership.com for more information. You can sign up for my newsletter. A lot of interesting stuff here on Litvak Leadership Live. We talk about various topics from the book. And it'll be available January 10th. But Bill, always great to talk with you.
Is there a pre-order date on that, Sean?
There is not a pre-order date. It is January 10th is when it's going to go live on Amazon. And that's when everybody can go in and get the book. But what they can do in the meanwhile is they can go to proverbsforleadership.com, sign up for my newsletter to hear more about the book. I send out a newsletter every single week, talking about leadership, talking about the book, talking about the guests that I've had on the show. You'll be featured this week in the newsletter.
I love your newsletter. I also really appreciate your TikToks and your Instagrams. It's always a great positive uplift in the middle of the day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There's a lot of social media out there, and I try to participate in it to encourage people all the way along the way. So, Bill, awesome seeing you. Hold on so we can have that conversation that we talked about. Everyone else, be happy, be well, be blessed in all you do, and half of Friday's left. Go out and get it.